born and raised in Gibraltar. I went to school here, did my A-levels and GCSEs at Bayside. And when I was 18, I had a choice to either go to the UK, like the majority of my colleagues at the time, but I was simultaneously offered a full basketball scholarship to go and play basketball in the US. So,
whereabout in the US?
It was, at the time, St. Louis, Missouri. Yeah, St. Louis, Missouri, to play for St. Louis. It's called UMSL, University of Missouri, St. Louis. So I was intimidated at a young age. I didn't know if I wanted to be so far away from home, but I took the chance, and I've never looked back. It was a great time. I went and I played 2 years of basketball in St. Louis, and then I moved down to Alabama, and I was in Alabama, in North Alabama, for 4 years, and that was a great area to be to. St. Louis was quite busy. I didn't really focus on my studies. My grades sucked, but then when I went down to Alabama, countryside, peaceful, land of.
What did you study?
I studied finance,
Okay.
Business finance, and the city in North Alabama was Florence, Alabama is 2 hours south of Nashville, 2 hours south of Memphis. So if you wanted exposure to a bit of city music, it was accessible.
And how has the popular culture there affected you, like your growth as an individual? I guess no.
That's a really good question. I completely changed my chip when I was out there. Completely changed my chip. I worked in banking a little bit when I finished, and I was in a banking culture in the States, which is a bit more cutthroat, a bit more aggressive. People love work in America. Like you walk into the office late, you get dirty looks. You leave at 6 p.m., you get dirty looks. Like it's aggressive culture, and it's the land of opportunity, right? So I kind of bring a little bit of that back with me to Gibraltar for sure. A bit of more entrepreneurship.
What about risk? Because, I always have this theory, which I'm not sure if it's right or not, but I see entrepreneurs from the US and from Israel as well, which I think in this specific respect follows, the United States approach. But it seems that Europe, it's quite risk adverse. And, if you go bankrupt as an individual in Europe, it's really, really tough, I believe, to, start again. And you have a stigma, that it's really hard and labeled, which is really, really difficult to, get rid of. Whereas I see people from Israel and the US, they just, finally successfully, establish a very successful business. And they come from having bankrupt and having, failed and having tried, which is just part of the process. But it seems that they're much more risk savvy. Do you believe this is the case, or?
Yeah, I'm not too sure really, to be honest. I don't think that's the case personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think Americans like to work more. Okay. People like to work more in North America versus Europe for sure. I don't know how that relates on an entrepreneurship level, to be honest with you. And I've never been asked that. It's really interesting because, I feel like everywhere I go, there's people that just prefer the 9 to 6 and switch off.
Yeah.
Or, they're on the grind as an entrepreneur, and I respect both lifestyles. So I don't, I don't really think that applies to the States. I don't think there's just like more entrepreneurs in America than there is Europe, but I'd like to see those numbers. You might be onto something.
No, more than numbers, it seemed to me like more to the approach that, different culture have to failure. Like, gotcha, that was like in Europe, I feel, but again, I don't have that much experience and I don't have actual number. It's more of a perception.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that, in Europe, if you fail, that's severe and you have a label and, you're the guy that failed. Whereas I see people, we have some, Israeli clients that come and they have failed as part of the process. And now they're very successful entrepreneurs. They learn from those experiences. And I draw the parallel with the US because of, what you see on TV and like what's online, which again is not a reliable, source of information. But that's the perception that I built around it. Very happy to reconsider it if that's not the case.
No, you're probably right. I mean, Gibraltar specifically, at least, we're a small community. So people are a little bit, they're always conscious and worried about what the community is going to think of them, right? So if you're in the States and you're in Texas and you fail a startup, nobody's going to know who you are, what you did. So you're on to the next mission.
So moving on, I'm curious. So you said that you worked a couple of years in banking in the US, correct?
Yeah, funny enough, the main sponsor of my basketball team, my last year there, the main sponsor of the University of North Alabama was Progress Bank, and it was a startup bank in the South. And the president on my senior night there, came up to me and asked me if I wanted a job at the bank. So I graduated on, I think it was May 23rd, and on May 24th, I walked into my first job in banking, which was cool. we were in a little office this size, and we grew up, and then we grew into a company, or at least a department of 20 people in a much bigger space. So my first experience was taking a company from 3 to 20.
What was, I have two questions in this respect. What was your role in the growth? And second, was this a challenger bank, or was it a traditional bank but just at the startup phase?
It was a traditional bank.
Okay.
Yeah, so loans, mortgages,
Okay.
savings accounts, retail products. And I was in sales. So people would walk in the bank, and I was the first person you see, and I'd take them from A to closing a...
Were you cold calling as a part of that?
And I was cold calling when I was cold calling, and I hated it so much. I think my first task was, the president of the bank just stuck a huge stack of papers on my desk, and he's like, "Hey Sam, you need to call these numbers and tell them about safety deposit boxes."
Was it very much Wolf of Wall Street or stuff like that? I mean, not in terms of like legitimacy of the business. I'm just saying as to the attitude.
Yeah, no, not so much. It was more lax. It was more lax in Alabama, but a great experience nevertheless. Yeah.
And why did you come back to Gibraltar? What brought you back here?
So actually, my visa expired.
Okay.
And when I finished college, I had a 1 year like postgraduate license where you're allowed to get some work experience. And after that, you have to find a company to sponsor you. And that process is very difficult. And if you're in a bigger city, it's kind of easier. But in North Alabama, I don't want to go into it too much, but it was just extremely complicated. I went down to Miami, interviewed with a couple of companies, but you have to have for some of these companies to justify a visa, you have to have a skill set that an American can't provide. I'm straight out of school. What is that?
Of course, yeah.
Unless it's spinning a ball on my finger, I gotta go. I need to come back home.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And so you came back to Gibraltar, and what happened at that point?
Yes, I came back to Gibraltar, and I had a job lined up with a wealth management company here called Plurimi. An ex-Hassan's lawyer, Anthony Jimenez, left Hassan's to set up Plurimi Asset Management, which is a London-based wealth management company. They opened up an office in Gibraltar to manage some of their high net worth individuals and funds. So I was an operations manager on 2 aviation funds, and I was also, while being an equity analyst for the portfolio management, which is where my heart was in investment analysis. I still work quite closely with the portfolio managers from that team. And then from then, actually, Plurimi sent me in 2014. They sent me to the Bloomberg Technical Analysis Forum in London, and that's where I met Dominic Frinsby, who's actually coming to GibTech 2020, whenever that happens.
When it's postponed,
June, hopefully. And Dominic was preaching about his book, Bitcoin: The Future of Money, and I bought the book. I actually signed it off. I gave it as my gift to my granddad. My granddad read it, and within like 3 days, he was like, that's a scam. But anyways, I took it on, and I presented to Plurimi on, because the head portfolio manager, Martin Carey, he wanted to know if this was an investment opportunity. That's one of the reasons why he sent me out there. And so I came back, and I'm pitching to the head portfolio manager, no, this is not an investment opportunity. We want to stay way clear away from Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Quite funny considering where I turned out. But in hindsight, even if I had recommended it as a buy, there wasn't no infrastructure to do so.
Of course, yeah.
And to add to that, what I did do was I started buying it myself. Now in 2014, buying Bitcoin in Gibraltar is extremely difficult.
I think everywhere. I remember coming across Bitcoin the first time when news on what was the name of the Silk Road came out. You remember? And all of the dark web and these YouTube documentaries came up. And I remember researching, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try. I want to see what's this Bitcoin. Maybe I can buy some. Not for an investment opportunity. I was just curious, of this like, very mysterious currency. And I remember going on Bitcoin.com. I remember at the time, and I couldn't buy it from there. And I was trying to search, like buy Bitcoin, and I could not find anything. I wasn't versed in finance. I was a sound engineer at the time. So, a lot of people say, oh, if only I knew about Bitcoin at the time. Well, actually, a few people knew about it because of the news, but it was so hard to find where to buy it. So
that's right. I mean, I ended up finding local Bitcoins, which is like a P2P marketplace. And we go to Tarifa a lot, me and my family. So I was meeting up with a guy in one of the beach bars there, and he would come and he would sell me €100. So I'm giving him €100 cash, and he's QRing me some Bitcoin. So every weekend I'm acquiring like 150, €100 of Bitcoin.
Buying USB keys for $100.
Yeah, and I feel like a part of me is like, why are you doing this? You're wasting your money, man. And then, so that naturally, around about the same time, some colleagues of mine were setting up the Gibraltar startup community.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of came in as a late co-founder to that and was adding value to that team. And then just fell in love with fintech. This is kind of like round about now the same time Revolut is
okay, starting to
make a mark. And I left traditional wealth management to join what I could find in Gibraltar in neo-banking, or at least startups, which was Moneycorp Bank at the time, and then later Wavecrest. And one of my main reasons to move to Wavecrest was that it was one of the only companies in Gibraltar at the time that was involved with cryptocurrencies. And Wavecrest at that time was issuing 95% of the world's Bitcoin prepaid cards for Wirex, Zappo, CX was the lead, BitPay, and others. So that was my move into cryptocurrency via Wavecrest and payments. Yeah.
And so you spent some time there, accumulated experience. But wait, before we move on, I wanted to ask you, what do you think, in your opinion, are the main challenges for mass adoption of Bitcoin or crypto assets? So
okay, sure. I think the main challenge really is acceptance at the government level, or the regulatory level, so regulation across jurisdictions, and I think that's why Gibraltar is so important right now in Europe. I feel like once there are regulated products on the market, we'll have more institutional adoption. Yeah. And right now we're already seeing some amazing retail products coming to the market, but we're going to see more and more regulated retail products coming to the market in 2020, 21, 22. And I feel like we'll see a surge in retail adoption.
I agree with you with respect to regulation. I also agree with you in terms of product, because product is paramount in having consumers adopting it. Because on the one hand you need government to allow for it and promote the adoption, but then you need consumers to actually use it. Right. And you mentioned, I believe you probably refer to TAP being one of them. We had Arsen on the podcast some time ago, and you definitely see more and more companies coming up with these type of retail products rather than focusing on business to business or exchange, which I guess was the business model a year ago or so. Now they're starting to have the confidence, I believe, thanks to regulation, as you say, to provide retail level products.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like crisis is going to present opportunities. Yeah. Right. And we can look at the current crisis, right, which is the coronavirus. And
that's really interesting.
And I told you we were going to talk about that before we started, but it's really relevant to this point because the coronavirus has created some opportunities for us on the B2B level, not so much the retail space, but we've had a shipping company say, look, we're struggling to pay our company in Asia. Okay. Can you help us buy some stable coins? Because they're saying they'll accept USDC. Okay. Right? And those are those best B2Bs, big tickets.
Why are they struggling?
Because banks are closed in China. Like they're on shifts. They're on shift work. There's only one person going in at a time, and they're extremely understaffed. And
so they cannot cope with the volume.
Exactly. So this is a crisis creating an opportunity. There's another example of that, which is one of the health organizations in Asia are trying to order face masks from a US company in Texas. And they're struggling to pay this company. And they've also asked if they can pay them in Bitcoin, because the company in Texas is like, yeah, we'll take Bitcoin. Wow. So these are two leads in the last week on the back of a crisis. So it's just an example of how crisis will maybe influence adoption.
And is there also an opportunity in terms of middlemen? So I know you're in this case, like the middleman would facilitate the transfer of Bitcoin from a place to another. But what about instant payment processing? So for example, one company could pay in Bitcoin, but the other company would receive the equivalent amount in dollars or in whichever currency. That could also be an opportunity. Have you been involved in something like that?
For sure. I mean, it's kind of like what Ripple is trying to achieve, right? So like replacing or circumventing global correspondent networks like SWIFT with blockchain solutions. So Ripple, and there's other companies that are trying to streamline that and have done a great job so far. We don't have a technical solution like that. We're an OTC desk. But what we find is an opportunity where people are coming to us to buy cryptocurrencies over the counter to actually pay for bills. We don't brand ourselves as a payment company, but organically we're seeing that flow. So I think there's definitely an opportunity for for companies to streamline global settlements, but there's already a few on the block.
And what about? Yeah, I know there is actually one company which potentially could become a client of ours, which is looking at doing something similar. It's not exactly in this type of scenario, of course, because it's quite remote, so you wouldn't build a business plan around it. But I'm actually curious because you mentioned that it's more of a B2B opportunity rather than a retail, but I think that there is also a scope for retail opportunity because, of course, the value we've seen it. The value of the market is going down. Especially, I'm from Italy, and the market there suffer considerably. I think that at one stage it lost 4% in one day. I'm not sure. I don't want to don't quote me on that. But so in that scenario, then Bitcoin become very valuable in my opinion as a mean to retain value as it happened. In a lot of time people are mentioning South America in terms of an example. For when you would want to have your assets in Bitcoin.
Exactly.
When the bank closed or in Greece. Those type of end of the world scenario. But really, we're experiencing one now. Have you noticed? The price of Bitcoin has surged in the past week, and then it went down again a little bit, but. What's your view on the retail side?
I agree with you that crisis and the retail landscape can also create opportunities, and I do think that Venezuela and other jurisdictions in South America are prime examples of that. This on the back of the last 2 weeks of market activity. I don't think we're at the point. I don't think it's at a point right now where, in Europe at least, we can relate to what's happened in Venezuela and deflation and stuff like that, but. There are retail opportunities in the global markets right now. You look at companies like in the tourism or transportation industries, like for example EasyJet or AIG with British Airways and Ryanair. The last week or two, they've taken a pounding. I think don't quote me on this either, but I think AIG was down some 60%. EasyJet was down like 38%.
Flyby just fell completely.
Crazy, the floor's just falling through. So if from a retail opportunity, if you want to go ahead and open a brokerage account now and buy, play the Warren Buffett long game and buy cheap, now is the time to do it.
That's
tempted to exchange some Bitcoin into
shares in this company.
Into shares, into shares in these companies. But I'm kind of it's kind of bad, but I'm. I don't flinch at 5% and 6% moves anymore since I've been in cryptocurrency.
Wow, okay, because the potential exposure you have in crypto is much higher.
Exactly, but no, there's retail opportunities out on the market right now for sure.
But also, that like British Airways, I mean, of course, this is not investment advice.
I know, of course, absolutely not.
But that a company like that would receive government support because you're looking at basically what represent a country, it's the airline representing country. So whatever happens, I assume that the UK would stand behind them, So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving back and forward in a way, how did you move? How come you established DAM? What happened? What led you to start your business?
Okay, so I'd been buying cryptocurrency for a few years.
From your friend in Tarifa.
From my friend in Tarifa. Still friends with him, by the way. But now he buys from me. Huh? See how the roles changed. I got to the point, I entered a couple of ICOs early, the Ethereum ICO, a couple of a couple of early ICOs, and I got to the point where I was just very distracted at work. I was like, wow, this is amazing. What's going on right now is big.
Yeah.
I felt like it was time. And at the same time, Gibraltar was like planning to roll out a regulatory framework in the space. So myself and two colleagues at the time, Philip Vasquez, who was one of the founders of the Gibraltar startup community, and Thomas, who worked with me at Wavecrest, we were meeting up at the Gibraltar startup communities, and we were like, look, guys, there's a regulatory framework coming out. This is a brand new industry. How many times in our lifetime is this going to happen? Maybe another 2 times if we're lucky. So we were like, look, there's a space. We identified an opportunity in the market, in the industry, for an over-the-counter desk and a custodianship solution. So we onboarded a couple of clients and we grandfathered in Q4 2017. So when the framework did roll out, we had the opportunity to operate and grow our book while simultaneously applying for the license.
Yeah, and so you could start operating.
Exactly. It was a team of 3 and many hours of input, but it was a great ride. I mean,
know,
we're only 2 years in. It's not by any means a success story.
No, but it's still, I think it's remarkable. And, you have some industry expert of the caliber of John Matonis, which we had in the previous episode. And he specifically mentioned that custodianship is going to be one of the most requested services because, of course, it's needed. You have a lot of new players coming on the block, and first of all, the confidence that they would get in having a regulated entity. So even if they operate in other country which lacks regulation, they can sleep at night knowing that the entity where their funds or their customer funds and keys are held is regulated and has a regulatory oversight. That in itself is huge. And, he expects that as Bitcoin moves to a unit of account, custodianship is going to be, of course, on the rise, the need for custodianship. So, maybe you don't consider it a success story, but being already an established player in this market for 2 years, which is a very novel market, I think it's quite a big thing. But
Thanks,
I'm really curious to know the challenges that come with opening a business. So,
okay, certainly. So,
how old were you when you started?
27. Yeah, I'm 30 now.
So you dropped out everything. And you decided to.
I left everything, man. I was all in. I had a vinyl record company, so when I moved back from America, I brought my vinyl over, and I wanted to buy some records and buy some vinyl in Gibraltar, and nobody sold them, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? You can't buy a vinyl in Gibraltar?"
Yeah. Again, a trend that was going up in that year. I can talk to that.
Yeah, exactly.
Extent.
Yeah. So of course, you would be interested. So I got into some partnerships with some labels and distributors out of London. I was bringing them in and sending to some shops and selling them. And at that point in December 2007, in November, December 2017, I was getting paid more. I was making more with Briefcase Vinyl than I was in my job.
Wow.
And I closed Briefcase Vinyl the same day we started rolling Damn out, because I was like, I'm going to put so much time and effort into this.
And you left also your job. You left everything.
I left my job. I closed Briefcase Vinyl. And I was like, I'm all in right now to get this going.
How much do you think that helped in being successful in establishing it?
Look, you need to be all in on whatever you do. If you want to have a successful venture, you can't have 3 ventures on the go.
Yeah.
Unless you have resources and capital to just
can employ people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you can distribute from day one, then that's fine. But if you're a young entrepreneur and you don't have the resources to immediately hire, you need to be all in. You can't be doing it on the side.
But what about your vinyl business? That was a business that you grew in parallel, correct, with your job?
Yeah, in parallel with my job.
And how was that? Sorry, before going into DAM, which is like...
I wasn't expecting to talk about Briefcase Vinyl, man, but man, it was so much fun. You remember that? Yeah. I had my website, I had stock at home, I was getting orders, I was getting on my moped, and I'm driving around Gibraltar like...
Was it only geared toward Gibraltar customers?
Yeah, that was it.
And you had enough customers to cover your expenses for shipping and all of that?
I could have lived off it comfortably, with salary, everything, the money that Briefcase Vinyl was generating. And it was great because I had some partners on Main Street. So I built like these vinyl shelves. Okay. And I stocked them up, and I was like, look, you don't have to pay for the shelf, you don't have to pay for the vinyl, I'm just going to stock you up, and whatever you sell, we'll do a 50-50 rev share, right?
So you would do music selection, or you would rely on the companies in London to recommend the title to stock?
I would do all the selection. That was like my passion. So I'm choosing the vinyl, and I'm also like getting feedback from the market. I was just out of Alabama, so my taste wasn't really aligned with the local market. I quickly found that I came back like very indie country. Yeah. And then, there's a lot of...
what was it, the indie rock or like Arctic Monkey style, or was it more hip hop or rap or...
No, it was more like...
classic rock?
No, it was more country... influenced music, country
in Gibraltar.
No, that's what I came. That's
no. I'm saying here.
In Gibraltar. Yeah, it was more the people. The local crowd were looking for either pop, complete pop.
Okay, like George Michael and stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that, like the Beatles and very popular music. Or on the other extreme, and there wasn't anything in the middle. On the other extreme was guys looking for
techno music. Yeah, okay, for DJing.
Right. So I had two, and I never embraced the techno market.
London is not ideal. Did you ever think of reaching out to Hardwax or these guys in Berlin and like trying? It was too much.
I thought about it, but the demand was in the pop Is
Of course.
people wanted to buy a Beatles record. They wanted Abbey Road. They wanted Revolver.
Yeah. Also, DJing nowadays is so easy with like CDJs and other like digital facilities. But anyway, nice, nice bracket.
That's a separate podcast, man. We can talk about that for hours.
I'd love to.
Yeah.
Okay, moving back to them now.
Okay.
So you close everything and you fund digital asset management, which is them. First day, what happens?
So we find an office space. Philip, my partner's family, have some offices. We get some mates rates or family rates. We move into a small office, half the size of this, and we start figuring it out. And we at the beginning, custody was our focus. We went into a partnership with a local provider. We have a bunk-like facility in Gibraltar where we keep our hardware. We thought that was really cool. We were like, man, we have like a Zappo-like fortress here in Gibraltar.
I read on your website, military grade, and I have to say, I was like very impressed.
It's really cool, and we were like, "Man, this is it," But actually, custody didn't blow up for us as we thought it would.
Yeah,
the breadwinner and the early low-hanging fruits was OTC, but some of the challenges for us in early 2018 were opening up a bank account. We're very fortunate to have Turicom Bank here.
Yeah, a lot of businesses said that. Actually, a lot of businesses move here for that reason.
For that reason,
not just Turicom, but like the whole infrastructure. You have, service providers in each respective capacity, from accountants to lawyers to a banking system, which accommodates fintech products. So.
Absolutely, yeah. We have really savvy corporate service providers, and. But one of the challenges was banking. Turicom helped us out. They gave us, really, again, mates rates with the local guys on the grounds here. So they really helped us out. Hassan's really helped us out. We all had our skill sets that we brought to the table to also reduce fees and overheads. But we also realized there was premiums. If we want, first of all, the big four back in the day, accountancy firms didn't want to talk to us. But so we entered with we approached let's say mid-major accountancy firms. And the premiums were, it's just more expensive because it's a new industry,
risk.
Right?
It's also more risk. Also for lawyers, usually, I guess Hassan's strategy was to remain as affordable as you can be. But of course, you're taking a lot more risk on when you're advising on these type of assets.
So that was a challenge in a startup in a novel industry. Not only legal fees, accountancy fees, insurance through the roof at the time, because there's just no data on the market, right? So they didn't have any experience in that. So
even securing an insurance, I guess, was an achievement in itself.
And it's matured now, but late 2017, early 2018, forget about it.
Yeah,
easy for an eToro or a Zappo.
Yeah, because they have a second model, they have their main model, which is reliant on something else.
Exactly. But for us, it was... So that was one of the main challenges, I'd say. And then the next challenge was being a young team, right? We faced a lot of criticism.
Exactly. I was about to ask, have you struggled being taken seriously at the beginning?
For sure, yeah. I mean, people counted us out from the get-go. These guys are going to be around for 5 or 6 months. These guys aren't going to get their license.
And for many, it was the case.
Yeah,
I have to say. For many, unfortunately, lack of experience sometimes does translate into early failure. But
exactly.
So, what do you feel set you apart from these early failures?
Just staying lean and mean. And the fact that we didn't have a choice but to stay lean and mean, to be quite honest with you. But I guess we weathered the storm and what was the crypto winter by just keeping our overhead super low and just outworking people. I mean, that really comes down to that as well. There is an element of just purely outworking people.
So were you the only one that, left its job and whatever was doing and fully committed to this project, or also the other members of them did the same? Yeah,
so 2 of the 3 partners did that, myself and one of my colleagues. It also didn't, at the time, it didn't make sense for all 3 of us to leave work because we just didn't have the cash flow to generate income for all of us. It would have put us in a difficult situation. We also didn't have any big investors at the get-go.
When did you secure one? When were you able to secure investors? Was that when the regulation came out? Was that did it help?
No, we did 2 rounds of investment before we acquired the license. So we did 2 pre-license raises, and then we've done 1 post-license raise, and now we're going to do our second post-license raise, which could be our Series A later in the year.
It must be really hard, I guess, not to outsell yourself at the beginning. If I think about having a business, I would just probably throw myself, at an investor, because it must be so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, we would, don't get me wrong, we were looking for investors, but not only are we young, not only do we not have massive networks with VCs and stuff, when the local community is super risk averse when it came to cryptocurrencies at the time. So
and small.
So it wasn't easy for us. We were looking for investors, but at the time it was difficult. But we closed not a lot of money. I think it was £50,000 or something like that, or maybe a little bit less. But that was enough to help us get to the point where we could be at least a candidate for a license. That's when we first took on some bit of money. That's when the regulators here were like, okay, these guys actually could achieve this if they put the following steps in place.
I see. And from there to now, because, I think the DAM, and I really believe that, I'm not just saying it because of the podcast, I really think the DAM, as well as Turicum, as well as TAP now, is one of the, and Anitor, and I just think, but especially DAM, because you're business to business, like Turicum, it's extremely important to have you guys in Gibraltar to promote other companies coming here and further developing this hub that you guys contributed in creating, because I think it's so important. You are to many service provider what Turicum was for you, because Turicum was able to provide you with a bank account, and you are able to provide retail focused businesses with the ability to have custodianship or OTC and start operating without having the license immediately. That is such a huge incentive, and that's clear from the amount of customers that come to us at the beginning and then end up relying on you for these type of services. So how did you take it from that initial stage to now, and what are the difficulties that you've faced along the way, and what are the difficulties that you're facing now?
It's been a great journey. Once we got our accounts open with Turicom, we were able to accept fiat currency.
Yeah,
and that's the point where we became a desk. It wasn't until the actual account with Turicom was open, and actually that was 6 months after incorporating. So it took us 6 months to get our first bank account, and that's being a hand's length from the bank, right? So imagine the difficulties for other people around the world. But we started by taking orders on WhatsApp, on Skype, voice deals, right?
Yeah. So you were like a crypto broker.
We were brokers. Well, we still are brokers. That's what we do. But we were doing that over the phone, a very similar operation to my experience in Plurimi, where we were buying shares and stocks and bonds and fixed products for customers. And then we've slowly moved to now recently rolled out our OTC platform. So now customers don't need to speak to us. They log into their platform, they book a deal, they want to buy 500 Bitcoin or sell 100 BTC. They do that
happens
online.
In the back end.
Happens in the back end. So now we are... we've got to the point where we have with manual trades and going to conferences and with limited resources onboarding and just hustling. And now we're getting to a point where we're thinking more about IT.
Yeah, so automating the process to make it less manual intervention and more scalability. Yeah.
So we're embracing technology in 2020. We brought on an all-star CTO earlier in 2019 to guide us through sort of the architecture and what that looks like. Our CTO came to Gibraltar 20 years ago and built the first online gaming platform for Victor Chandler. So he sat in their offices back in the day and saw the guys taking bets on the phone, and he built and he streamlined that.
So automated that process.
He automated the process, and then he came in and he sat with us and he
did the same, replicated the same type of business model. Exactly. He looked at you and turned it into software.
Exactly. So now we're rolling out with several different products in 2020 and 2021, and we're looking forward to some scalability.
Are you going to keep that product for yourself, or do you plan to also market that as a white label product?
Oh, it's just going to be ours.
Yours. Okay.
Yeah. We're not. Well, you never know, right? But I don't think I don't think our approach will be like a software company.
White labeling. Okay. And what about other challenges that you're facing now? So you're automating the platform. So your strategy is changing from grinding to hopefully being more focused on strategy and actually marketing. That's something that I'm very interested. Which I guess So I guess the first 6 months before receiving the account, you were operating, as you were saying, but also like creating the network, right? So now that you have a product, how do you market it? How do you use a lot of, how do you go about it?
It's a great question. I mean, there's no formula. In my opinion, there's no correct and absolute formula in B2B sales.
And it's very difficult because the type of product you deal with, it's not welcomed by a lot of online venues, which otherwise would be so easy to market in,
Exactly.
you know, like Facebook and those.
It's very specific.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a mask right now for the coronavirus. You put on Instagram, you put £20 into an ad, and you know it's going to get this much hits and this much clicks and this much. There is no formula. So it's very relationship driven, and you have to have a little bit of luck too. So it's going to conferences, speaking to the right people, and also educating. I mean, we've been working on with some clients, with some blue, like tier 1 companies in Gibraltar for like 6 months, educating them on why receiving payments in BTC for these parts of your business is actually a lot more beneficial, quicker, and stuff like that. So I think it really depends on the product you're taking to market. But for us, we found that it's 100% relationship driven. So for our business, at least to date, there has been no online marketing efforts. We actually did a 6-month trial with an agency,
and it wasn't worth
the while.
So I have a question actually, because you mentioned that, you know, you're working with companies in understanding what type of offering are worth receiving payment in Bitcoin and why that is convenient. Now, I'm a massive interactive entertainment and esports fan. I love video games. Now, something that I've always thought of, and I'm not exactly sure the dynamic of that, so maybe you can clarify that for me. Microtransactions. So, you know, especially now on mobile platforms, you have a lot of interactive entertainment company, from application to video games, that, you know, really are based on microtransactions. So you have a lot of users spending, you know, £1 here or £2 there. So I was thinking, do you think, is there any benefit in using cryptocurrencies instead of, you know, fiat payment in terms of fees? Do you think that could be a venue, or it's not convenient in that case?
I think it is. I think retail payment gateways make a lot of sense for international companies. For example, if you're a gaming company, you mentioned gaming. If you're a gaming company in Gibraltar and you want to enter into Asian markets, you need to have relationships with local payment gateways. You need to have ways to repatriate your funds and treasury. And you're always managing funds cross borders. You need to have local agents on the ground, speak the local language, know the demographics. You know, marketing in Europe isn't the same as marketing in Indonesia. Like, it's complex. But at least if you start accepting stable coins for bets, for example, you know, you cut out your gateway challenges and you cut out your cross-border challenges immediately.
Delays in fees and cost. Well, that could also relate probably with respect to what in gambling they call casual gaming, but I'm talking about video games and esports. I guess also in terms of prize pot, there could be a convenience in receiving prize money around the world in, you know, a stable coin or a Bitcoin payment, so that you don't have all of the conversion fees and all of the transaction in the middleman. So that could be
absolutely. It's instant, practically instant compared to traditional banking, and much cheaper.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
What's coming up for DAM? And since you're talking about technology and how you're incorporating that in your business to streamline the process, what technology do you think is very promising for the years to come? So, you know, that could be from AI, which I guess it's, mind goes directly there, but like augmented reality, virtual reality, those type of technology, machine learning, what are you considering any of these for DAM or?
Yeah, not really. Perhaps I can give you some insight into what I'm thinking here with DAM. So we've just rolled out our OTC platform.
Yes.
And we're in the process of migrating all our clients onto there. So there's less manual intervention from the team. DAM's probably going to be taking on an extra 3 to 4 people this year.
Okay.
Probably by summertime, moving into a new office. We're rolling out our retail gateway.
Yeah.
So now we're going to allow merchants to accept Bitcoin. That's already being built. We're rolling out a mobile application version of our OTC platform, which should be done in like 60 days. So now our clients can just download the app and book deals.
What about point of sales? Are you going to provide merchants with the ability to...
Not in 2020.
Okay.
But it's in the pipeline.
Nice.
And we've got some really nice partnerships coming up for that. So we are thinking that ways.
Can you disclose with who? Or
no.
It's confidential.
No, I cannot actually. It's in the local community though.
Okay.
And we're also going to be releasing some external Bitcoin APIs. So when clients come to us and they say, "Hey, do you have APIs that so we can like source liquidity into our ecosystem from yours?" We have Bitcoin API coming soon, and that should be ready in 60 days. The company that we partnered with to roll out a lot of this technology is Astralis, which is a Hassan's client.
of course.
So they're building. Adam Nori. Yeah,
He should come actually on Blockchain Rock soon.
Yeah, he should. So Adam's, me and Adam have been working on sort of the specs for a lot of this technology over the last 4 months, and his team are solid, very good.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's very exciting to see how the whole ecosystem in Gibraltar is, tying up together and really creating new offerings, and that's really why I came to Gibraltar a couple of years ago, because I came here just to do a work experience, and I thought, okay, this place couples speed to market because it's forward thinking, with regulations such as, for example, fintech and with gaming, and at the same time it's a tight community. Like, we go for a beer here and I see you, Arsen, Torosian from TAP, I see Adam Nori from Astralis, it's like everyone is there at the table, and thinking about how they can combine their respective services to come up with, something innovative and something that customers want and maybe don't even know, like to call it Steve Jobs, a product that they don't even know they want, but then once they exist, they would really facilitate, like really ease their life and, the way they purchase, what they purchase. So it's really interesting. Yeah. I'd say that we're pretty much okay. Or is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Hey, not really. Just thanks for having me on the show, man. You mentioned Adam and Arsen. I speak to those guys a lot. These guys are visionaries, to say the least.
I agree.
So you're going to be seeing more coming out from TAP and Astralis for sure.
I look forward to it. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on Blockchain Rock, Sam. It was great. I really enjoyed it. And that's all. Thanks, everyone.